I'm not going to lie. I was going to lead with some lame jokes about, didn't I see you last year? But I know we're better than that. We're better than that, damn it. We're on a higher plane of existence, dear friend. And we're friends here, aren't we? And friends, don't let friends get into that kind of nonsense. Those kinds of jokes live in the whole working hard or hardly working sphere. And that's the part of the universe we want to circumnavigate. So let's gather what's left of our wits and step into this new year like the champs that we are. Welcome to Seared. Welcome. I'm so happy and thrilled to see you here. I don't know what I was just talking about. So I feel like we are the champions should be playing. I hope you had a lovely transition from 2023 into this new blank sheet of paper we call 2024. If you follow me on social or part of my email community or even my men's group, and if you're not, what's wrong with you? I'll drop the links in the show notes because you should be. See what I'm saying? Anyway, if you do follow me in any of those spaces, you know that I speak about the difference between New Year's resolutions and goals. Now, I'm not going to go into that specifically in this episode, as I feel I've said enough on the other platforms. But I do want to say that if you have goals or made some sort of pact with yourself, so to speak, to improve your lot in life in any area, then I'm cheering you on. I'm cheering you on. There's no doubt I'll be talking about goals, but today I wanted to share not so much a story, but moments I had in my career that I just felt like giving up. And it's germane because there are many moments in my life, including recently, that I felt the same. And no doubt, because you're human, right? We are, right? You're not a bot. Did you check did you do the CAPTCHA? I know that you have felt these kinds of feelings as well. And I just want to quickly share my experiences and also what I have done to turn that around. And that's really what I do here. And now I think about it, they sort of do have to do with goals. As I'm processing this right now in real time. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we will touch on goals. And it's kind of like, I feel like Pacino in The Godfather 3 when he says, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. So I guess goals it is, sort of. You'll catch my drift when we get into this. So we're going to dive right in. So the first time I felt like throwing in the kitchen towel was when I had just started my first real apprenticeship at this big place that I used to work. And I was just out of culinary school. And like most culinary students, I thought I knew it all. I had graduated well and scored high in my subjects. I could not only wield a knife like Aragon, but I could also do food costing and menu design. I understood labor and all the other areas around running a restaurant or some sort of industrial cooking place. So I was the full package, right? Now, the problem was that my new employers didn't see it that way. They didn't know it. And so when I arrived on my first day, the sous chef, who was this hulking East Indian man with piercing green eyes and a temper fit for a mob boss, first gave me shit for missing a day of work, which he was very wrong about. I think eventually he apologized maybe a week later. But once we sorted that out, he promptly put my enormous and vast skills to work on cutting 200 pounds of mini red potatoes. Cut them in half, put them in the water. He barked at me, and that was it. Those were my instructions. And there I am in the corner. I had no one to talk to. I was in this cramped space in the prep kitchen, and I already hated everything and everyone. Like, oh, ego, what a wicked web you weave, right? So I was calmly fuming in the corner, and I was already thinking about how I could quit. I was thinking about how I could sneak out. I was thinking about how they were wasting such a majestic talent like me on potatoes. How dare they? But I remember that seething feeling like it was yesterday. It's so easy to just bring my mind there. And I think I called my wife at the time. We were newly married as well. So I told her my thoughts. And she talked me off the ledge and just asked me, just finish the shift, okay? Just do that. And then when you get home, we'll talk about it more. I'm like, okay, you're the smart one. And I did. All right, so that's that little vignette. So let's park that pouty Paul for a moment. And let's also kind of pull out for a second. Now, while I was preparing for this podcast, I'm breaking the fourth wall here. When I was preparing for this podcast, I was thinking about the other times I wanted to quit. And to be honest, I was shocked at how many times I wanted to walk out or storm out of places. Countless times. I'm almost a bit embarrassed as I think about it. And I thought it was only a few. But as I started to kind of jot these down, I was like, oh yeah, and this, and this. And I had so many instances where, I had to talk myself off the same ledge of just stay here, Paul, just stay. And, every time, again, as I think about it out loud, it came down to ego, to frustration, and just sheer exhaustion. So many times I fantasized about telling the chef or the owner to cram it with walnuts. So many times I wished to get fired. It'd be like, if I got fired, I'm okay with it. I'm going to go for a drink after. So many times I wanted to slink out through the back alley door and never be seen again. And I'm sure as I'm sitting here, I'm not alone here. This, as you're listening or watching, might trigger memories of you at some point wanting to slap your boss across the back of the head and give him a few choice words and saunter out of there victoriously like Peter sticking it to Lumberg. You remember in the Office Space? Of course, this isn't abnormal. 62% of workers want to quit or have already quit their jobs, especially in the wake of the quote-unquote Great Resignation that occurred, during and after the pandemic. And the usual suspects of why people are fed up presented themselves. It's a poor work-life balance, unfair pay, toxic workplace culture, feeling undervalued, limited advancement, too much stress, et cetera, et cetera. You know the typical kind of things. And the reasons why people stay then? Because if we hate it so much, then why do we stay? Why do we stay? Well, friend, comfort, familiarity, financial obligations, fear of the unknown, lack of self-confidence, job security, fear of rejection. All of these, there's more. That's why so many people stay. So what do you do? That's a question millions ask. And they suffer kind of in that gray zone, right? They're just grinding it out, just grinding it out. They're the people that gripe about Mondays. They celebrate TGIF. They're just existing in some ways. And, many, they do their jobs, or at least, they come to a good place about it. They realize, you know what? I'm not going anywhere, and they make the best of it, which is hooray. And that, in a way, is what it comes down to. I'm going to share a bit on what worked for me, especially at the end of my last job where I was dying to leave. And also how this shows, and how this shows up in other areas, like even in this podcast. So I can go a little meta here in a bit. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the goals part because that does, admittingly, fit into it all. So take a quick sip of your coffee or wine or whatever it is, whatever floats your boat, and we're going to dive in. So the last place I worked before I stepped into entrepreneurship was the longest I had ever worked in a single place ever. It was 7 years. Normally, I jump from place to place to place, with 2 years being about the average. It was a combo of hospitality being transitory in nature, but also I was eager to learn more from other chefs, and just, I always wanted to grow. I never wanted to grow roots in one place. So while I adored the place that I was working, where I worked last, my passion for what I did had waned. I spent the last year or so just doing everything not to mail it in. Some days I did, and I'm not going to lie about that. I still did the things I needed to do. I was a professional and definitely didn't want to slack, but something was missing. I'm going to admit, I had rage quit before. Again, not proud of it, but it did happen. Or I was fired for either being a drunken mess or whatnot, usually the drunken mess part. Those didn't happen often, but they did occur. My reputation certainly took a few dings. Again, not something I would, trumpet or suggest people do, but they're part of my story. Now, this last place that I keep talking about, I worked, they knew about my past. And, I was stone cold sober the entire time I was there. And I even got promoted, and it was a great place to work, really great people. I had a lot of fun. But again, the passion had faded. So, what did I do? Now, before I share that, let's go back to my apprenticeship. We're going to do a little time jump here. In that place, I wanted to leave badly, remember? So what did I do? I came up with a plan, a 5-year plan, in fact. And I said to myself, okay, Paul, there's a lot of things you're not going to want to do. There's a lot of things you don't want to do now, and they're annoying you and pissing you off. But in 5 years, I want to be a sous chef. So I will do whatever it takes to do that. I will peel a gazillion potatoes. I'll stay late. I'll come early. I'll learn everything I can, both at work and outside of work. I'll follow trends. I'll subscribe to magazines and get cookbooks. I'll visit restaurants to research them. I'll play around in my kitchen at home. And I'll work like a son of a bitch. And guess what? I did. I did it all. And I stuck to it. And whenever I felt like I was, asked to do something, what I considered menial, I just did it with joy because I knew my plan. I knew I had to sacrifice. And in the end, I became a sous chef. And it took only 4 years, in fact. And having that target made a huge difference for me emotionally and mentally and all others. I still had my moments, but they were quickly tempered with the goal in mind, that vision I had of being a sous chef. I watched countless apprentices and cooks over the years just drop off the side of the road. I watched many of them leave for the same reasons I wanted to leave: ego and frustration, exhaustion. But I stuck to my guns. And the successful people I know in my life do the same. They have like a North Star, so to speak, a destination, a goal, a target, whatever you want to call it. They have a vision that they keep alive even when the mundane, the tedious, the obstacles hit heavy and hard. Without a goal, without a vision, you're rudderless. You're just existing. Working hard or hardly working. It's that kind of mentality, and that is tiring. Now, having a vision and goals are what separates those who grow from those who just are stagnant. Now, again, I just want to reiterate, there's nothing wrong with enjoying your 9 to 5, going home and doing your thing and doing it again until you retire. You can still have a vision and goal. You just may not know it or may not be a professional one. So this is absolutely not to dog anyone who lives that kind of, what can I call, simple life, just a simple way of being. It's a beautiful thing. Not everyone wants to be CEO of a multinational or to be the king of Siam or the queen of Sheba. It's okay. We all have our things. You can still live a quiet life and have vision, have goals. So the way I see it, vision is like your North Star, which provides direction and purpose. A clear vision motivates and inspires. It's the why behind all your choices and decisions and goals. Vision is flexible and adaptable, compared to like hard-nosed goals. Vision gives you a sense of fulfillment and meaning that transcends the daily grind. And it aligns and prioritizes your goals because goals are different. Goals are the stepping stones to get to your vision. Goals without a vision can be messy at times. They can be contradictory. They can be aimless or without context to make them even more purposeful. People have goals without a vision, and it's tedious, right? Like they're hitting goals, yeah, but there's nothing emotional about them. Goals can be short term, whereas vision is long term. Goals tend to be measurable and specific, which is fantastic, whereas vision is expansive and fluid at times. So again, even if you work, a simple 9 to 5 job, maybe not simple, they're not all, they can be really challenging. Your vision may to be, let's say, have a peaceful and loving family life. And so your job can provide for that. And for others, their vision is different. Maybe they want to help the hungry in meaningful ways. And you can set up goals to help make that happen. My vision back then was to be a sous chef in 5 years. My goals were varied. Like one was to finish my apprenticeship strong, which I did. Another goal was to work for a fine dining restaurant, which I did. Then after learning for a year, my goal was to finally apply and find a sous chef job. And I did that too. So I had these goals nestled into my vision of leading a team, even if that team was 2 people, which it was at first. But I still hit I hit those goals as part of my vision. Now, remember, I also talked about my last job where I was getting bored and felt like I had kind of no North Star anymore. I was kind of feeling rudderless. Here's the cool thing. That place, both places I'm talking about, same place. They're the same place. So the place that I finished was the place where I started out as an apprentice. I started and finished my career in the same building with about 14 years in between. Like, how awesome is that? Like, that was totally not planned. So it's funny because I was leading people who back in the day used to train me. So obviously there was a lot of lifers out there, as we call them, which again is cool. It sets them up for success in other parts of their life. So what did I do in that last position, that last situation where I felt like there was no passion? This was a little different, because I know a lot of you have that issue too. And when I hear people talk about this is what I share. What I realized in my last job was that I loved, and I mean loved, mentoring and coaching one-on-one with my staff. That lit me up. I didn't even know I was coaching at the time. I hadn't gone into coaching. So that lit me up. But the thing is, it wasn't a big part of my job, but it still brought me joy. So I made the decision to do this. I chose to focus on that, on the mentoring. So when I went to work for the day, I thought of how I could help the cooks and the managers, one-on-one. I focused on that part that lit me up. And that helped me carry through the rest of my tasks. There was other parts that I found tedious and mundane. But I knew I could come in and make a difference one-on-one through mentoring and coaching and directing. So I ask, what is the one thing, no matter how tiny it is, that you enjoy about what you do? Think about it. And when you do, see how you can amplify it while you're at work. Is it maybe greeting people? Is it problem solving? Is it the joy clients have when you work with them? Is it the techie part? Whatever it is, focus on that. Let that feed and nourish your soul. Let that, sort of blossom out into the other parts of your job. And believe me, it made the biggest difference in my last gig and how I showed up and how I left, which was on great terms, because I focused on the thing that lit me up. Now, what about this podcast? Here we are, breaking the fourth wall again. I mentioned earlier that I had certain feels recently. Okay, before I jump in, I'm going to share that, and I'm going to leave you with a few parting thoughts. So I need to grab a sip of coffee or something. So go do likewise, and I'll see you in a lickety-split. Are you back? We're good? I'm good. I was starting to get all hoarse. Okay, so I was talking about a little wobble, let's say, that I had recently. And it was about this very podcast. Yes, this one. During the holidays that we just had, there was this teeny weeny voice telling me, Why bother anymore, Silva? You're not getting the numbers you wanted. It's stopped growing. You've tried to get on other podcasts to promote this one, and you've heard from absolutely no one. No one wants to hear from you. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. Maybe it's time to hang up the microphone. You got 15 episodes, 16 episodes in. That's good. That's good. But maybe it's time to quit, and so on and so on, right? And it was interesting hearing this part of my brain lobbying for me to shut it down. And I'm not going to lie, because we're friends here, right? We're friends. We established that earlier. Part of me was starting to listen to that. As they say, half your brain manufactures bullshit, the other half buys it. You know, I see fellow coaches and colleagues with podcasts doing 10 or 100 times the numbers that I have. You know, I struggle to even get 100 subs on YouTube while seeing friends grow in the thousands per month. Like boo-hoo, right? Like, ugh. But that's what kept coming up. So again, I had a choice. I made a decision. And this is where I applied what I talked about earlier, that vision. My vision is this: to be in front of thousands, if not tens or even hundreds of thousands. And let's say that too is a 5-year plan. Cool. What does that look like? I have no clue. I have no freaking clue at all. None. Maybe it is this podcast. Maybe it's not. Or maybe this is the next stepping stone to the next thing. Maybe this is the goal to get to the next goal. But my goal right now is to continue doing this podcast because, one, I enjoy it. And two, I know that podcasts are a long-tailed comet, right? Success often doesn't come right away. You know, I think of Joe Rogan. I know he's polarizing, but I just think as a podcaster, he started in his own bedroom or some whatever. And look at him now, mega super success. There's other huge successes, of course, but I find that it's a very small percentage, right? It's a tough gig given there's over like 5 million podcasts or whatever out there. But my vision remains the same: to be in front of people, be in front of you, show up powerfully, be myself, be of service. And in doing so, in thinking it this way, I relinquish a lot more of the ego and pride. I let it go. It makes it easier for me to create without self-imposed conditions. And of course, I'll still do my best to grow this, of course. I mean, I have goals. You know, I'd love to hit 500 downloads per episode. Like measurable stuff we talked about, like goals being measurable, specific. But whether I hit that or not, it's the growth that matters most in going for it. And that's the key. This is the key. Whether or not you hit the goal, it's how you change and develop on the way to hitting the goal. That's it. That's where the magic is. So if this podcast were to die on the table, then I'll do it on my own terms, happy with who I've become and knowing that I've left something of a legacy. I've grown in many ways. And that's, again, this is just one way of opening up and sharing myself. So in the same way, you have the ability to create a vision for yourself. You know, you get to create goals within that vision. You see, you're only limited by your own perception of yourself. You can't outperform how you see yourself, your self-image. If you see yourself a certain way, then you will find ways, consciously and subconsciously, to live up to that self-concept. With vision and goals, you get to create a version of yourself of someone who hits these goals and the vision. You get to do it, no one else. So for me, there I was, a lowly apprentice, first-year apprentice, but I saw myself as a sous chef. So I did sous chef things. I pushed myself. I learned managerial things. That's when I started to actually read books on leadership. This was years ago. I still do to this day. I took the lead as often as I could. I comported myself in ways above an apprentice, but still yet humble and respectful to the others. So my self-image was in line with my goal, with my vision. Does that make sense? Do you hear me, my friends? So, as we sit in this new year, and with people creating visions of themselves and goals, how do you see yourself? Are you doing the same things expecting new results? Because we know that doesn't work. Ain't nobody got time for that. It doesn't work. You have the same habits, the same things. You're going to get the same results. You got to shift things up. Do you have a vision? What do you want? What lights you up? How do you want to show up in life? What is your North Star? Now, if you don't have one, that's okay. Sit with it. But know that the only thing you want to quit is in how small you see yourself. Quit that shit. You got my permission, okay? Quit that shit. See yourself in a powerful way and lead with that. Let that take the lead. And I promise you, it'll change your life. And how cool is that? You get to make those choices. Oh, it's getting hot in here. All right. Now that you know I'm not going anywhere quite yet, I'd love to hit that 100 subs on YouTube. Remember, it's my goal. If you can share this podcast with anyone who you know can benefit, especially this badass episode, I think this is probably my favorite one so far, then please do so. Any reviews, comments, likes, shares, the deal. That makes a huge difference to this little teeny weeny podcast for now. Whatever you can do, that would be super uber awesome. So thank you. And with that, you know. Kitchen's closed. Now piss off. Scram. That was rude. Oh well.